You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Chris Gillis. 5 things you should never do on the first date. Welcome, ladies. Oh my God, we are in the barrel scraping, dark, deep night of reality show bucket. The deep, dark reality, but we're really not, because thanks to Netflix, you can watch Love is Blind, which is what we're going to talk about.
I would say sort of barrel scraping. I think it's more like a paella. You know, at the bottom of the paella and the crust, that's the good part, baby. Guys, you bared it. You got through Bachelor, and now it's time for the fun stuff where some 30-year-olds and you get to see people's transition from without even seeing each other to seeing each other, to meeting each other's family, to living each other, and you get to see it all here on Netflix. Thank God to that.
Love
so I'm
is
excited
Blind, season 3. Woo, woo, woo. I do have, just if anyone's keeping track of Bachelor in Paradise leftovers, Victoria Fuller and Greg Grippo were on Nick Vial's podcast talking about their timeline and did they cheat and all these kinds of things. And you know what I just really want to say, because I watched a little bit of the interview with Nick Vial, and this is an important thing because we talked about it when we spoke about The Bachelor in Paradise, Victoria and Johnny. And what she said, Chris, is that the reason why they started to become estranged is because he lied about his job and career, which is not cool. That he did that. He said he owned a bar, then he managed a bar, then he worked at a bar, then he actually didn't have a job.
they just went to a bar and just drank
Pretty much. Then he went to a bar. And then she apparently, and this is something that we talk about a lot, then she tried to fix him up like he was the fixer-upper house, right? Like, oh, you're into music? I know a lot of producers. I can connect you here. Why aren't you doing that? Like, she's in Nashville, right? And that was the beginning of the end. And I just want to point out, because this is so important, and I don't really know if this was said in that interview, and I don't think it was. Dude, he told you who he was. You said, what are your career goals? And he was like, I'm passionate, I'm ambitious. And she blew it off. And that is what so many ladies do, right? You get the info on who a guy is, and then you're like, oh, he's so cute, we're in love, it's amazing. And then, you know, like 3 months down the road, or how, you know, he shows you who he is, and then you're surprised and pissed. You know, like what I just really, it was just like, why are you even saying this is why you broke up? Like, you knew this going, why didn't you go for Alex? Remember, she had Alex, like stable, mid-30s, like super cute, had a job. I mean, just like how can we get women to not make this mistake?
And I think correct me wrong, but it sounds like the thing that bugged you the most is not only did you blow right through the red lights, but then you blamed him as if he said it was a green light. And like, the guy told you to your face, and now you're using it against him as a reason to break up and move on to the old sexy Greg Grippo. That is some bullshit.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, he shouldn't have lied about his job. He shouldn't have been ashamed about it. And also, he said he was ambitious, but you know, she didn't use the, what do you mean by that exactly? What are you really doing? And then she pretended it didn't matter, when in the end, that's clearly a non-negotiable for her. Non-negotiables will always come back to bite you, which leads us to Love is Blind. So if you have not watched this tasty treat, we're going to kind of break it into sections and talk to you about it over the next few weeks. But if you've never seen this saucy little show, they're testing out this concept. Can you meet someone sight unseen, fall in love, and then get married? And it's funny because I'm now watching Indian matchmaking, which we may talk about later, but that's the whole, like, Indian matchmaking is you meet, you marry, and then you fall in love. So this is like a whole other play, right? This is like You meet, you fall in love, and then you see each other and get married. Lots of different ways to do it. So this episode today, we're going to talk about this part in the show, which is like, I think the first 3 episodes or so, where they are meeting each other and there's like a wall in between them. And so they can't see each other. They call them the pods, which is so weird. And you meet the characters. And I think that we're going to talk about a couple of ways that people energy is leaking. We talk about like what's insecurities are coming through, even though you think you look great and you think that you've got the amazing dress and you think everything is great. And you're like, why are guys not picking me? Or why are guys picking me? So if we start with that, I want to talk about just generally, like, how do you think that the characters, the cast at the beginning, we'll talk about the men first, really showed up? Like we had Cole, we had Andrew, we had SK, we had Brennan, like just if you were going to look at like some general archetypes of guys.
Sure. I love it.
Yeah. What do you say?
By the way, do you love the pods? I, as much as I do, I love that it's almost like this mini little, these rapid dates where you get to peer in, because first dates, and you get to kind of, I think dating can be confusing, right? Because you take time in between, but it's interesting to see how we show up in, it's just, they edit out so you get to see the person quick, and you really get to build a character up and see some of the picadillos and the missteppings that we're going to talk about on how they show up. Like, holy moly. Now that you mentioned it the first time, with the first, maybe, Cole, you said at one time, not a big deal. And then you see him do it to another, go, uh-oh, maybe it's a pink flag. And then by the end, you're like, dude, what are you doing? Stop it. It's that you call it leaking, but it turns into, for me, it's like, that's a fire hydrant of things that need to be worked on, because you get to see them all blasted in there. So that's what I love. I always get, I love watching, and the big reveal of, it's just so much freaking juicy feedback, right? And that's so tough to get, I think, in dating.
In dating, that's true. Okay, so let's talk about Cole, because Cole's like mid-20s. He's got a really fun-loving personality. He's very into his faith. He's looking for someone who's very into faith. And he talks a lot about those values that he's looking for. He talks about wanting to have deep conversations. He wants to have intimacy. Like he says, he's really looking for his partner. And he seems in the pods to me mature, emotionally mature-ish, like in that first initial setting. But I want to say, because he's juxtaposed and in mirrors, even though there's a wall, but he's mirroring the other people that he's talking to. So for example, when he's talking to Colleen, who comes in and she's like, hi, I'm Colleen. I'm a ballerina. Like that's all she says when she goes into the pods. I'm a ballerina. And then we find out later, like, it's not even her profession. It's just her hobby. She's not a professional dancer. No, she works like on the reunion. It says she likes 3 jobs. Like she works like 3 office jobs. It's just her passion.
If you tell, if you say something enough, it becomes the truth. I missed the part where I found out it's a passion, because she said it so many times, it got ingrained into my head that she is the ballerina. Holy moly.
Okay, and then I was looking at her and I'm like, you don't look like a ballerina. Like not judging bad or good. I'm just saying you don't look like a ballerina, like a professional dancer to me. Yeah. Right. But anyway, so that's how she leads. And she leads very much. And this Cole thing, I think it's really interesting, because he says to her, like, I'm looking for something like deep. And Colleen says, well, I'm not deep. Like, I don't like to go there. Like, I guess I'm a shallow person then. And Cole's like, I'm out. Yeah. What do you make of that whole, was she just reacting? Is she really emotionally unavailable? Did she get caught off guard? Like,
I think that was a great matchup, because he almost does the, what's your word for the over sharer? What's your archetype label for the dude who just like just, oh, I'm so brave. I'll share everything. And he's so emotional, right?
He's the crybaby, right? He's
Yeah,
like, oh my
totally.
God, here's my
Totally.
issues. Here's my, here's my stuff. Like it's me, not you, babe. Like,
Yeah. And then she pulls back and she's the opposite of all of those things. So I guess, yeah, to answer your, how did Cole, I thought it was interesting. Okay, Cole shows up. You said it like you said it was like the juxtaposition, kind of confusing in some ways,
Well,
right?
yeah, because Colleen's like in her mid-20s. I think they're the same sort of age. They're both, they seem like they would probably meet up in person,
Sure.
like they would be attracted. And then Zainab comes in, and she's older. She's a flight attendant, Zainab. And Zainab, he's like, I mean, I knew your name wasn't Lily. Oh my God, he said such stupid things. Cole said so many stupid things. But anyway, and then she's like in her mid-30s. She has this story about how she's lost both of her parents, right? And she's a flight attendant and she's really into faith. And then Cole seems to be like more mature. Like he seems to be like his grown-up version of himself. Like he's now seeing, oh, this person is older. Like she has no family. I could step in and be like, her hero and her rescuer. They're both like, they connect definitely over faith. And when she shares the story about her parents, like he's like, oh my God, like, I'm in love with you. And I think what's interesting about that is, and then there's Colleen who's like, I'm not going deep. I guess I'm a shallow person. Okay, bye. Yeah. So what do you think about those two different reactions? Like, who is he really?
Totally. I think Cole is on the show and we're talking about him on this podcast to teach us about how we are, in our own rights, many different people. And I think how dating, especially those first couple dates, it can be overwhelming. And I think that's how he presented, right? That's a therapy term. Like, that's how I experienced him. It's like, whoa, you're kind of a lot, dude. You're like being a little too much. You're being almost trying to show off and being overly childlike or then overly mature and all these overly things. And you just kind of like, hold on, bro. You're kind of giving me too much on my plate. I'm just getting to know you. Dating's scary. And I think a lot of the gals on that show were like, yeah, I don't know where to do with him, what box to put him in. And it's almost, I guess that does seem a little scary, kind of to take a step back, what you're just discussing. We'll jump shows here. And like you were talking about the opposite, where it's like Alex back in The Bachelor, you're like, dude, that guy, he was so incredibly crystal clear of who he was. So that was also a little bit, it could be, well, the mystery wasn't there, but it's also not sexy to be too mysterious. And I think sometimes in dating, I know I've been guilty of it, is I just want to show this is all of me. And I think we have to give ourselves, measure it out a little bit in incremental doses and check in and make sure they're given what you put on their plate before you keep stacking more and more and more.
Definitely. I think you have to meet someone's energy, right? And if you come across and you're like, well, here I am, it can be a lot. And we don't know the timing and the pacing of these pods, but we do know that it took place in like a week or 10 days, really, is by the time they meet and the time they get engaged. So I think, the other thing I want to say about the Cole situation is again, this Victoria Fuller Johnny situation is, here's Zainab, who's like a career professional, successful. And she's like, so, where do you live? And he's like, I have an apartment, but I don't have a couch. She's like, wait, well, do you have a job? Like, what's your deal? And that's the other thing and we'll talk about what happens with them, but it's that thing of like, you think, and this is what I want everyone to really hear. You think you have these non-negotiables. And you're like, yes, this is what I'm looking for. And then you meet someone and you're like, start to pretzel them into being like, well, maybe I could, like, you have potential. It's falling for somebody's potential and forgetting that you want to get somebody factory installed with those things rather than waiting for them to sort of happen.
What about like, and are you saying that sometimes we backpedal with our non-negotiables and to really take a good look and figure out what's going on inside of us? And, we may be telling our girlfriends, I'm never going to do this and this and this. And then next comes like, well, start overlooking them, those things. And then fast forward like to the Victorias or the Kates in the Bachelor in Paradise season. Then they're like all pissed off about the things.
Yeah, about who you really are, even though you said this is who I am. And so from that we can transition to another couple who ends up together. Bariste, is that his name?
Bartise.
Sorry, Bartise. Sorry, he got called like barista and all that stuff online. I'm sorry. So sorry. He ends up with so he has to also choose. He's choosing between two women. And then I really want to talk about this moment in the pods, because I was just like, are you effing kidding me? So he goes on a date, or he starts dating Raven, who's a Pilates instructor, who's very untraditional, very kind of aloof. She seems to be uncomfortable with her feelings. And so Bariste, is that his name? Bariste?
Bartise. And she presents herself is very, very high value. I think that's important to note. She's, again, for good or for bad, but she kind of subtly in so many ways lets her know that she is that high-end luxury brand to the men. And some of the men, they're like, oh, well, luxury brand, I must have that. But I think it's important. Just because not everybody should be driving a Lamborghini Okay,
so I'm going to disagree with you, because so this is why I don't think that Raven was coming off as high value. I think she was coming off as aloof. That was because when Bartise is sharing the story of his childhood and his deepest, darkest pains and secrets, we see Raven in the other pod literally doing jumping jacks, doing Pilates, doing like tricep kickbacks with like a rubber, I'm like, wow, girl. And it was really weird because this is how her character came in the pods. And then it's odd because then we never see that side of her again. So it's very odd.
Right.
But I was just like, okay, I did not see that as high value. I saw, and he was like, he could tell she was working out, and he's like, wait, are you doing jumping jacks? Like, what is wrong with you? And that was what put him off of her, right?
Yeah,
obviously.
Dude.
And so, and she was super obsessed with that, even in, when she ends up meeting SK in the pods. And she's like, later on in their relationship, she's like, you're going to work out with me. You're going to like, she's obsessed with working out. But I didn't think of her as high value. I thought of her as like completely emotionally unavailable.
Totally.
Super like, so like my shit don't stink that like.
Yes. Okay. That's what I meant to say. No, I agree. No, as a person, I guess we're going wall one, wall two. What I'm saying is I felt she was trying to, she thought, I felt she was trying to make the effort that her value was so much higher that it's more important for her to get jumping jacks while he's pouring his heart out. Yeah. And on the other side, dude, aloof, there's got to be a meaner word than aloof. That was just fucking rude and disrespectful and cold. That was that made me cringe so hard as a person. I do care about people, and I found that so off-putting. I don't know if I would have went back to the room. Honestly, I would have told all the guys that they would have made sure nobody picked her. I would have been like, I was with this girl in the pod, and I was like having this like conversation and being really vulnerable, and she was working out on the other side of the pod. Yeah, it's kind of shocking. But what's interesting, but I want to say this because I think it's important for listeners, is sometimes that some of the ladies who listen, they have this thing that they love, that they're really good at, that they get a lot of attention for. Like you work out, or you're really into fitness, right? Or you're a ballerina or you're do salsa, or like there's this thing and you're really good at it. And like, and you can lead so hard with that. Like, I'm into fitness. Like, that's all I care about. And a guy's going to be like, okay, but what else about you? Yeah. And it comes off super masculine. And also like, and when Colleen does it, you're like, why are you leading with this? Like, who are you? And that's
the lack of confidence or self-worth that's underneath those two versions of those women is, why are you leading with what you do or what you're good at, or trying to paint a physical picture?
Right.
Right. Like if I'm a ballerina and I tell you that and you're on the other side of the wall, you imagine what I look like.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And I would say take it to the next level. They don't only lead with it, but the middle, it's the being until they finally are forced to expose who they really are. And that's what as a little sidebar. That's why I love this show so much, because we get to see all of us in the dating process. From the first time that we match with somebody, we're one version, and then it become another version, and we get to see these, it's like a stew that just starts coalescing and changing and blending into different things. And some of these people who, by the way, we're maybe sounds like we're being hard and bagging on them now. Some of them turn out to be not as bad, and some of them turn out to be way worse than what they initially present as. So I think the takeaway from me, as Marni, you've mentioned a couple of times, is, eventually we're going to find out who we really are.
Yeah. So in the end, like you can, and that's what dating is, right? Like the opportunity to really get to know if the idea of the person you have is really who the person is. And in these instances, it's really interesting how these women, and it feels like the men are like, well, that's not true. I don't know. Is it maybe the men are a little more consistent with each woman, whereas the women are sort of like, one way with one guy and one way with another guy? I do know that there's a couple of like character types, right? Like we've got Colleen, who's sort of like pick me energy. In fact, she ends up in the pods, like literally just, will anybody take me? She calls, like, she's like, I thought Cole was going to pick me. I thought Bartise was going to pick me. Like, okay, the last guy there who doesn't have a person. She's like, okay, I pick you. So she really wants to be picked. And then you've got Raven, who's sort of like a complete tough girl. And then let's talk about Alexa. Alexis, who is a curvy girl and is pretty confident. Seems she's pretty confident. She seems to me, honestly, to be the most stable emotionally of all of the characters that they show.
She does seem to be comfortable, in her own skin and unapologetic for her, what makes her her.
Yeah. And she's like, this is who I am, love me or leave me, but I don't really care. Right. And she meets this guy, Brennan, and they don't really show them much in the pods because it happens really quickly. And in like 5 seconds, he's like, okay, will you marry me? I mean, it's pretty much, they're like the Serene and Brandon of Bachelor in Paradise. You're like, okay, that was easy. Nothing really happening here. So let's now talk about sex. Because there's a dude in there who's in the pods for a minute or two.
Yeah.
And he's like super like suave, like, hey, I'm gonna like, I think is he talking to Zainab? No, he's talking to Nancy. Who is Nancy?
Yeah.
Nancy. And he's like, yeah, I like travel the world and I'm gonna, have you ever heard of like tantric sex? He's like so awkward. I felt like I was watching the beginning of like a bad porn. I was like, no, look away. What's he going to do next? But it was kind of like confident in a way, but also it was, and he's like worldly. I mean, he was better than Bartise, in my opinion, but also weird. And he was like doing some weird stuff with putting eye drops in his eyes. But he was leading with sex. He was like really trying to be like, I'm going to be your sexual teacher. And there's some like fantasy weird thing that maybe is attractive about that, or intriguing maybe is probably the better word. But Nancy's like, no. And so and he's very successful. He's, got a career. He travels. He's all these things. Why do you think no one's picking up what he's putting out?
I think because he's still getting used to his new shoes. He's a guy, he completely transformed. He talks about it, how he used to be this shy, introverted person who couldn't talk about sex and was so uncomfortable. And now He travels the world and has transcendental sex. By the Google searches shot up through the roof and was like, what the hell is I want? I don't know what it is, but I want it. While on top of the African Sahara with hyenas and Lion Kings going off celebrating him. And so I think when a person is still kind of in those, breaking in their new boots and figuring out who they are, it's a little bit, it's too much, and it's a little scary, right? Because we're still.
It's like when somebody just starts therapy or something, right?
Right.
And then they're like on a date and they're like, so let me tell you what I discovered in therapy. And you're like, wow, like you're oversharing a lot. And I think that's it, right? And so I think it also just speaks to, in the end, like, I think that for a lot of women, they think that sex is the thing that they should lead with, that's going to get them the guy, that's going to be the big turn on. And I just think that, especially now, when people are a little, it's just like everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just easy to get and see and whatever, that it's just not, like, it's not attractive. It's not what is going to get you that second or third or fifth date, or be the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. So I really want everyone to sort of hear that. Like, and if a guy is, and I just was coaching a client, today, and she went on a date with someone around Thanksgiving time. And he was like, hey, I had a really great time. What are you wearing? And she was like, ooh, and it kind of like soured a nice enough date, but he was like really putting out a lot of sexy vibes. And he complimented her, and she's not into that. It just put her off. And so I just want everyone to listen, who's listening, men and women alike, don't lead with it. Because in the end, Andrew didn't get picked by anyone.
No. I just spoke with a friend who's working on her dating life out of New York. And she says that's what guys always do there too, is they push sex. And I had to remind her that hey, before you get mad at us, what's the statistic? Every 7 seconds, something like that. Every 7
seconds, man.
We are going to be thinking about it. So what Andrew did and what some of the other guys didn't do is they didn't apply that filter there. And then sometimes, so you can't blame us, because we are always searching for the path of least resistance until we prove that there's so much more than just, what's down south. And so I think, so maybe don't necessarily rule them out, but get them. Marni, you're good at this, about getting them to change subjects or tap the brakes and be like, hey, wow, keep hitting the same note over and over again on that, guitar. It's getting it's not that interesting. Can you change it up a little bit? And I think it's something good to remember when we're dating, whether we're a ballerina or we're the best gymnast or CEO or whatever, to mix it up and make it interesting versus just that one thing you want to hang your hat on.
Yes, it's a pivot. It's a graceful pivot. The old, the slower I go, the faster I get there.
Yeah.
You want to know the secret to my heart? Like, call me, right? Or ask me about like what I love in life. Like, or ask me what my passions are. Ask me how I started my career. Ask me, the other thing is, if you are interested in someone, like you think he's attractive and you don't want to like derail it and run the other way, you can say, wow, I'm flattered. That's a conversation that I could totally see myself having with you later down the road if this works out.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, I think that as women, we need to like definitely steer, and the guy has an opportunity to read the room. Because you always say men are big dummies. I didn't say it. Chris says it.
Yes.
Right. Men are big dummies. And so if you like give them the script and they're like, still like, are you wearing silk pajamas or cotton pajamas? No. Right. And then you got to be like, never mind.
Yeah. Give them the chance. And also, I think it's important, because guys like Andrew, like you said, he was attractive, smart, the cool, sexy voice. But what you brought up the word, but he wasn't curious with any of these gals, and he kind of came off like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, and that he was just drunk off the smell of his own farts because he's so proud of what he's accomplished, and instead of asking, kicking the ball back to the other person. So they just sat there, and that does not make, no matter how awesome you are and proud you are, and he didn't really say, like you point out, take the temperature and see, should I, give them more mashed potatoes? Don't assume just because you love it and you're proud of your transcendentalism or ballerinaism or whatever it is.
Right.
Keep
Or your
piling on
Pilates.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the takeaway for today is like, and even in this show, like there's a wall and yet there's people still like want to be seen for like the external instead of like their insides. And that's the habit, right? They go into these pods and they're like, blah, and it does or doesn't work. They end up sort of getting into truly dating other people. It's not like the first person that, and like for Colleen, it takes her, she gets rejected a bunch of times and then she finally, someone picks her. So she's got pick me energy. All right. So before we go, and for those of you who are playing along, you say you want to watch at least the first 3 episodes. And then next week we'll be talking about once they leave the pods and start getting into the honeymoon section of the show where they get to see each other and spend some time with each other. Any like number one hot take for you around what we can learn from like me falling in love with someone based on who we think they are, because that's really what's happening in the pods.
Reword that question one more time to make sure I understand it.
Yeah. So like this part of the pods is this part of the show is basically you're falling in love with the idea of who you think someone is, which totally happens in real life, whether there's a wall between you or not. You go on a bunch of dates and you get this idea of who someone is. And you're like, he meets all my non-negotiables. He's amazing. I love him. So we see people doing this. So what's the hot take from like that, from that mistake?
Got it. I love it. All right. This is my hot take. My hot take is that you're it's lazy, it's inefficient, it's ineffective to spend your valuable first date time talking about the external, the what's, because the what's, we're going to see it, we're going to know it. Cool, you do ballet or you are wildly successful, whatever it is or so. After the person says that, after you get it, the person doesn't really care about that, because that's not who you end up falling in love with. The person ends up falling in love with is the whys. Why are you so interested in running these companies or these these nonprofits, or what is it about makes you so passionate about being ballet or physical fitness? Why are you so dedicated to this? And that's going to say so much more. And it's such a good, interesting, juicy point. And those are the things you guys can really bond on, because it's unlikely that, 2 world-class Pilates instructors are going to, it's not going to be, because you could very well, and even if you do like Pilates or be obsessed for very different reasons and then completely miss each other and not have that union. But whereas it's more likely that, maybe he's a mailman and you're a Pilates instructor, but those same exact just heartfelt passions are what drive you to put your shoes on every day and go to work. And that could be something you guys can join together and build together and grow and build a family together.
I love that. That's like a commercial for non-negotiables. Amazing. Thank you for being here with your beautiful smile.
Not so beautiful mustache.
You're
but
not
it's
so
almost
beautiful. Time. Oh my God. When is it over?
I guess it should be over today. It's December 1st, technically. So.
Please let the hair gods remove your mustache and give Jeremy Crane a haircut. This is what I pray for. All right, ladies, whatever you do, life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes, and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to dwdvip.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.